everybody, it is Kate and back up and running like fully, and I am so excited to be back to making regular videos. I have missed this just so much, and I just can't wait to tell you guys all about what I read in July. And I'm gonna have a book haul up soon and a book tag, and it's gonna be great, and I can't wait to just keep making videos for you guys. It's just a blast. And July was actually somewhat of a slower reading month for me. I think I read a total of 8 books, which is slow for me. And it was just a combination of things. The first being that I am slightly over audiobooks, which is very sad because I had like 7 months where I was just like pounding out the audiobooks. And the other is a book I'm going to tell you about that just kind of slowed up all my reading. And I will just get the DNF that I did over with first, and that is Full Dark House by Christopher Fowler. This is the first in the Bryant and May series, and it's a very interesting and creative start to a detective series in that it starts when it ends. So the first book is, this starts this is like the very beginning of the summary, so I don't qualify this as a spoiler. One of the detectives is murdered, and there's a bombing in a big building and in Parliament, I think, in London. Anyhow, that's the very end of the series, and so the other guy is solving that, and while he's solving that, it's flashing back to their first case together, and then the following books are all of their cases together. So I thought that was very cool and unique, but this was a mystery that it was kind of this combination of a couple things, and that I think I've realized about myself that I don't really know how to handle humor in mysteries. Like TV shows that I watch that have humor with mysteries, I kind of like can roll with that, but when it's in books, I'm kind of confused. It's like I feel like I gravitate either towards cozies, and those can have humor, or I do hard-boiled, which don't really have all that much humor. And so it was kind of this hard-boiled, but with sort of a weird atmosphere to it. And so it was not anything like I thought it was a bad book. It was just one of those that you can tell just doesn't mesh with your personality. And so I was buddy reading this with Kate from the novel Nomad and with Liz from Now Voyaging, and unfortunately I had to DNF it. I think both of those ladies enjoyed it, so I was happy for them. They found a series, and I was bummed, you know, because I was enjoying doing a buddy read with them. But it was like my mystery loving self just didn't know how to handle it. It was kind of like I didn't know what category to put it in. And not like you have to put everything in a category, but it just wasn't for me. So I ended up DNFing that because it was really slowing up my reading. So I realized if I wanted to like save my reading month that I would have to DNF it. So then moving on to the book that really slowed up my reading for the month, and that is The Wife. This is the second in the Kristen Lavransdatter series by Sigrid Undset, and I knew going into this, because of events that had happened in the first book, that this was going to be a like really slow grind for me. And I had such high hopes because when I started this, like Booktubeathon was going on, or maybe it wasn't even, it was a certain readathon anyhow, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna read so much this week, and I'm gonna knock this out in like 3 days, because it's a little over it's like under 400 pages anyhow. And it's just, I cannot force myself to do dense reading marathon style. I wish I could. Like some of these ladies on BookTube who can read classics so quickly, I admire them so much, and I like, maybe I should talk to them about how their attention span is so good. They can sit there for that. But this was so hard. It was like a maximum of 50 pages a day that I could get through this. And it was just really sad events happening, and I knew it was going to be this way. And so I put off other fun books that I was wanting to get to because I was like, I'll get this over with and then I'll reward myself with the fun books. And I think in reality, maybe the next time I'm doing something like this, I should be happy finishing it in maybe a week and reading other things on the side. So having a goal, because like I said, I just could not marathon this. It was very, very good. It was just the way the plot was happening. I don't feel like I can say much. Yeah, so this was a grind, and I'm a little bit put off now of getting to the third one, which is a shame because I feel like the third one will have more redemption in it and happy things. But in the meanwhile, this was really, really hard. So that really slowed up my reading, and I think in the future when I'm reading really dense reads like that, maybe I'll have that system where I have like a goal each day, not like I'm just gonna like marathon through it. So on to the other books that I really thoroughly enjoyed. The next one that I read, and I had started this in, I think, as early as the month of May, but it just took me a little while to get through with it, and that is Surprised by Joy by C.S. Lewis. And this is kind of his spiritual journey while he was in grammar school as a young child, and you just get to hear about kind of like his journey to faith. And it was really excellent. It just had a lot of wisdom in it, and talking about what is joy, this kind of longing that you can have for more lasting things. Yeah, just things that have lots of merit and that are edifying. And so it was a very interesting and thought-provoking read. And this was a buddy read I did with my friend from college, that we have a kind of very low-key, relaxed book club that we do. And so that was great that we had made time for that, because I just found it to be very edifying and positive. And then the next one that I read was a buddy read with Stephanie from That's What She Read. And this was a very spontaneous read. I was looking around on Instagram and I saw just this beautiful, from Random House Books, they had beautiful graphics of a book called House at the Edge of Night. And it had really beautiful colors on it. So it was just very eye-catching. Like they did a good job with their Instagram post. Anyhow. And I saw this book and I tagged Stephanie because it seemed like a book she would like. It was in Italy and it was a family saga, and you get to see several generations, and she was up for the buddy read like as soon as I showed it to her. And so we both got a copy from the library, and this was really fun. It was a perfect summer read. Like I said, a family saga and a beautiful picturesque location, a little bit of magical realism sprinkled in there, and it was really fun. And it was excellent to read after the Kristen Lavrenstatter, The Wife, because it was like a palate cleanser, and it was just such a blast. And I got through it so quickly, and it was just a real treat. So that was a perfect, light, summery, new release type book to read. And then the next book that I read was a super, super fun buddy read with a bunch of lovely ladies, and we read The Murder Room by P.D. James. This is the mystery that takes place following Death and Holy Orders. And this still is with Adam Dalgleish, and there is this kind of museum with all sorts of odds and ends, but there's a very famous, iconic room in it called by, you know, the locals who visit it, the Murder Room. And it just has a history of different iconic murders that have happened, and crimes and whodunits. And so people kind of, you know, have this fascination with it. Anyhow, I did this as a buddy read with Amanda Center and Whitney from All the Shelves, Sarai from Sarai Talks Books, and Kate from The Novel Nomad. And it was so fun doing this with so many ladies, and it was just such a treat to hear all the different perspectives. Now, unfortunately, this was definitely a good mystery, but it was somewhat of a come down after A Certain Justice and Death and Holy Orders. This, to me, just didn't seem as up to par, and I think the group was kind of divided on what they thought of it. A couple of them coming out just absolutely loved it, and then a couple coming out, like myself, thought it was good, but just kind of lackluster type ending. So definitely, I'm not saying it was a bad book, it just didn't like blow me away like A Certain Justice or Death and Holy Orders did. And then moving on to one of my favorite books, and this book did not disappoint me. So I had hauled several months ago this Elliott Family Trilogy by Elizabeth Gouge, who some of you may know wrote The Little White Horse, a famous children's book that is J.K. Rowling's favorite children's book. But this is like an adult trilogy, and this is like Angela Thirkle combined with Jane Austen. And so I really do enjoy Angela Thirkle, but sometimes I want kind of more meat and more depth to it, and this did not disappoint me at all. So it was also just a really fun time when I read this. My husband and I just celebrated our 5th anniversary, which is very exciting, and we went away to Princeton, New Jersey for the weekend, and I decided to take this book with me. And I had just been waiting and waiting to read this ever since I bought it, but I wanted to save it for a good time. And so I read this on the train there, and while I was there, and on the train back, and it was such a glorious treat. This starts out where this this family, the matriarch of the family, the grandmother, lives in a mansion called Dame Rocher, and there are several grandchildren who live with her, and then kind of this big crazy event happens, and the grandmother takes it upon herself to kind of fix it. And so there are, you know, interesting characters to get to know and interesting events that are happening and kind of people processing and dealing with, you know, crazy things that are happening in the family that is testing the strength of their relationships. And so in addition to that, though, it's at a beautiful setting, which is very like Angela Thirkle. It has a beautiful setting, but then the writing was so lush. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this. And you can tell she just has such a love for writing. You can tell she enjoyed writing this so much. And this takes place on the seaside, and so she goes into great description about all of the plants that are around, and I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was a perfect read. Now, unfortunately, after my husband and I got to Princeton on the train, we did not have that much of a plan, and we decided to walk to the Airbnb that we stayed at, and it was raining very hard, and so we had our suitcase and like everything else in a backpack, and then you can see what happened to this book. I was not very happy by the time we got to our Airbnb. Like, all our clothes in the suitcase were soaked, and this was in like a bag I was carrying, and the bag got absolutely soaked, and like my new beautiful book. So that was very sad. But the book was very, very good. So, and now it's a very tangible memory of that nice weekend that we had. And I'd like to read a quote to you, just of her descriptions of nature. These marshes were streaked with color like a painter's palette. There was the gold of the rice grass and the mauve of the sea asters and sea lavender, and the pools and channels that at high tide gave back the blue or flame or primrose of the sky above them, and at low tide flung back the light from the smooth, mud-like polished surfaces of steel and silver. Gorse grew upon dry patches of marsh, and red sorrel and golden saxifrage, and the glasswort. A spongy, seaweedy plant that could take every shade of color from crimson to deep purple. Patches of bright green grass appeared now and again with plover sitting on them, and rushes bent in the wind with a soft, cool sound that was indescribably peaceful. So like I said, just beautiful, beautiful. So this already is seeming to be a very romantic series, and it just checks a lot of the boxes for me. It's in England, it takes place in a period setting, and the writing is very lush. So sometimes those books that go out of their way to be in a really beautiful setting are kind of lackluster in the writing, and this writing just did not disappoint me. So I'm very, very excited to continue on with this, and I'm very antsy to continue on with this trilogy and find out what happens next with the Elliot family. Then the following book that I read is the second in the All Creatures Great and Small series by James Herriot, and this was a very sweet installment of this. It's when James and his wife Helen are newlyweds, and he is just so smitten with her and just very excited to be married. And then in addition to that, many great anecdotes, some that make you cry, some that make you laugh, and just this series is absolutely fabulous. So really happy that I continued on with the series, and I did mostly audiobook for this. Next was a huge surprise with how much I enjoyed it. So my sister had been telling me about a mystery that she read called Nine Coaches Waiting by Mary Stewart, and this was in a Friday Reads that I talked about, and this book was unbelievably satisfying, and this is kind of like a Daphne du Maurier-esque type mystery. And so I had heard about Mary Stewart from her Crystal Cave series, which is a fantasy series. So how cool that she also wrote mysteries, and I started looking up her mysteries, and she has written, I think, about a dozen other ones, if not more. And so I'm very excited to find out about this author. And this starts out where a woman takes a position as a governess, and things are not as they seem at this house. So I thought it was going to be like Jane Eyre, but it was totally its own thing. I couldn't stop reading. I read this no problem in 3 days, and that was with like reading other stuff for Buddy Reads, and it was such a treat. And yeah, I'm very excited about Mary Stewart as an author now, and I really would like to read more of her work. And then lastly, the book that I finished at the very end of the month. Oh my goodness, I finally finished it. A Suitable Boy by Vikram Seth. This book was unbelievably amazing. And I had a couple things to help me process finishing, you know, like such a massive book. And the first was that I book journaled about this, and eventually once I have like more of a book journal, I'll do a video on it. But then I also did a Google Hangout with Hillary, and we ate Indian food, and I had underlined a lot, so I kind of just like went back and read a lot of those passages, and it helped us remember things. And we just talked about our favorite characters and who meant the most to us. And I'm going to try to do a review on this, but it's just so hard doing a review on a book that you love so much. It just feels extra intimidating, and I you know, like I can't do it justice, but I feel like I should at least try and tell you guys more about this book. So yes, I'm so happy that I finished this, and it was quite the experience. So I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about everything that I read in the month of July. This has turned into quite a long video. I do apologize, but I had lots I wanted to say about the books that I read, and I will see you guys for another video soon.